It started in a haunted house on Halloween with just me and my friend Anna. Anna and I are total opposites. She's blonde, outgoing, and completely fearless. I'm dark-haired, introverted, and a people pleaser. That's actually how I ended up at this haunted house, because of my habit of people pleasing. Anyway, we went through the haunted house and it was pretty awesome. The usual people with chainsaws, screamers, clowns. One clown in particular kept following us. He wasn't like the other clowns who wore face paint with fake blood splattered on them. He didn't have a big red nose and clown shoes. He wore regular, albeit tattered jeans, a stained, sweaty white tee, and a clown mask. The mask was pretty detailed. It had the eyes cut out and a wicked, jagged tooth mouth with blood smeared around it. It was seriously creepy. He followed us all the way through the house as we giggled and ran into the fog room at the end. Once we made it outside, we went to get cocoa and watched the local bands play. While in line, the clown walked up and stood inches away from me, breathing in and out so hard, his mask stuck to his face and released with each breath. Okay, creepy, but pretty normal for this place. He walked away for a moment and we giggled, but he just stayed close, staring. We walked over to the band and he stood right behind me. He started tugging on my hair. I tried to ignore it, but he just kept tugging harder and harder. Suddenly he pulled so hard my head whipped back. Anna started yelling at him and he let go and walked away, but not far, like before. She wanted to report it, but I didn't want to tell anyone. We were at a haunted house and he probably didn't mean to, but she said no, and that they couldn't touch you. So we walked over to the ticket booth to complain. We approached a woman at the booth and Anna started, "Ma'am, that clown over there pulled my friend's hair so hard it nearly ripped out." The woman responded, "I don't see any of our clowns. They're all in the haunted house. None of our people walk around out here unless they're behind that rope, because some families with small kids come for the hayride and bands. But that clown right there did it. How do you not see him?" "Calm down, miss. That's not one of our clowns. Are you sure he isn't a friend of yours?" I just responded with thank you and told her that we were sorry. I just wanted to leave at this point. The clown was still staring and I was starting to worry, so this wasn't very fun anymore. Fearless Anna decides to confront the clown. She marched right up with me behind her and demanded he take off his mask. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. He reached out his hand to me and I refused to touch him. He pushed Anna from in front of me and stepped 2 inches from my face and screamed the most terrifyingly psychotic scream I've ever heard. Everyone turned to look. The band even stopped playing. Anna grabbed me by the arm and pulled. His stare had me frozen. Then Anna turned to me, her face twisted in panic, and slapped me. When we started running, I looked behind, and he was still standing and staring. Everyone just went back to what they were doing like it was nothing. We got into our car and peeled out. I've never really had any experiences that truly scared me, except this one. When I was about 11 years old, I went trick-or-treating with my sister and her friends, all girls around 16 years old. As we went door to door collecting candy and fooling around with silly string, I couldn't shake off this strange feeling that made me keep looking over my shoulder. At about 9:30 p.m., I turned around abruptly to see a man dressed as a clown about 2 yards behind us. Initially, I wasn't scared. I like clowns, and this was the first time I had seen him. I assumed he was just trick-or-treating. But he continued to tail us for another hour, never collecting candy, but waiting patiently for us at each house. I began to feel anxious and informed my sister about the clown. She suggested that we change our route to see if he'd still follow us. Sure enough, when we crossed the street, he did too. My sister, who has a fear of clowns, was quite disturbed by this and called our dad to come pick us up. We continued walking for about 30 minutes until our dad called, saying he was parked nearby. We quickened our pace towards our dad's car, but the clown intercepted us and tried to corner us. I think he knew we were trying to leave. My sister and her friends were in a frenzy, and me, being a naive and outspoken child, yelled at the clown to leave us alone. He responded by tilting his head to the side like a confused dog. With childlike confidence, I threatened him with a can of silly string, promising to ruin his outfit if he didn't back off. The clown persisted, so I blasted him with the silly string while my sister urgently called our dad again. The clown struggled to clear his mask of the string, and by the time he could see again, we were already running towards our dad's car. He caught up to us just as we locked the car doors. As my dad sped off, the clown slammed his hands onto the back window. I watched him out of the back window as he tried futilely to chase our car. I never figured out what his intentions were, but there were other reports of a clown fitting his description chasing children in the area. This happened to me back in the late 1980s when I was home one summer on break from college. About 2 years prior, my dad had purchased an old house with the intention of eventually tearing it down to build a new one. The house, built in 1916, had a really unconventional floor plan like most homes in that area. It had a central living room and kitchen, just like a normal home. However, the 3 bedrooms were more akin to separate apartments. Each had its own separate outside entrance, a private bathroom, and a door that led to the common area, the living room, and kitchen. Perhaps the place was originally intended to be a boarding house or something, I don't really know. The other thing that was a little creepy about the house was that it was all wood. The ceilings, walls, and floors were all brown, and nothing was ever painted or plastered. My dad was a pretty cool guy. While he was waiting for permits and financing, he let 3 of my friends live there for free in exchange for watching the place. They had a lot of parties, but my dad didn't care, as long as none of the neighbors complained. I went to a few parties there myself when I was lucky enough to be home from college. Eventually, 2 of my friends moved out, leaving my one buddy there to watch the mostly empty house on his own. He wasn't the type of person to be afraid of living alone in a half-empty house, so he was fine with the situation. One afternoon, I was at home when the phone rang. It was my buddy, and he sounded terrified. He told me to call the police and meet him out in front of the driveway of the house, but under no circumstances was I to go in. When I asked why, he told me there was a crazy clown in the house. Apparently he was sick with the flu and had been in bed for the previous 2 days. When he finally felt well enough to go into the kitchen to get something to eat, he ran face to face with a crazy woman dressed in a clown suit and makeup, who started screaming at him. It was then that he ran out of the house and called me in a panic from a nearby gas station. I called the police and then drove over to the house, which was about 2 miles away. I found my buddy on the sidewalk out front, and he was really shaken up. I asked him to describe what he saw, and he just kept saying, "There's a crazy clown woman in the house." I asked for more specific details, and he described her as dressed in a white clown suit with red makeup smeared all over her face. He was still a little sick, so he looked really bad, and honestly, he was freaking me out as well. There was no way in hell that I was going to go into that house to investigate his story. After what seemed like an eternity, a cop showed up. My buddy told him the exact same story. The cop then went into the house while we waited outside. About 5 minutes later, he emerged, escorting a crazy clown woman who looked exactly as my friend had described her. She had wild, unkempt brown hair and was wearing this weird, baggy one-piece. What was really disturbing, though, was her face. She had a tube of lipstick, which she crudely spread all over her cheeks in a failed attempt to make them look rosy. Although we were both freaked out, the cop thought it was hilarious. The clown woman claimed it was her house, and then accused us of being on drugs and trespassing on her property. When the cop told her to get in the back of his squad car, she warned him that she had powerful friends in Tinseltown who would have him fired. When he came back to talk to us, he told us he couldn't arrest her for breaking and entering because the house was half abandoned. He said the best he could do was drive her a few blocks away and hope she didn't wander back. This, of course, freaked us out even more. Fortunately, though, when they ran a background check on her, it turned out she had an outstanding warrant and would be going to jail instead. That's the last time we saw her. When we went back into the house, we found all kinds of crazy stuff written on the kitchen cabinets with the same red lipstick she had rubbed all over her face. There was also some 10-day-old fish in the fridge that my friend never got around to eating, which she had cooked on the stove and eaten. The really scary thing, though, was this crazy woman probably had been in the same house with my friend for at least a day while he was sick and semi-delirious in bed with a fever. She was probably harmless, but who knows what she would have done if she had stumbled onto him while he was sleeping? His door had been unlocked the entire time. Fortunately, she never did, as far as we know. One of the things she had written down on the cabinets in lipstick was her name. While I'm not allowed to disclose it here, I Googled it and found a mugshot that was taken of her some years later.